So the benefits of Carbon Boost are not so easy to just list off because they aren't direct benefits. What you're going to see in a soil and in a plant and in an animal and the whole system is some changes in how it behaves. And the way that the product functions is changing the activity of some of the key actors in those systems, which is namely plant roots and soil bacteria and fungi. So the actual benefit of Carbon Boost is improving and increasing their activity, but the things that you're going to see in, well, it is the real world, but things that you're going to see and notice in person are going to be things like the way that water behaves. And so one of the very, very consistent results that we get from using Carbon Boost is that the infiltration rate of water increases dramatically, sometimes 10 to 20 times more than what is normal for that area. And we've done that over and over with testing an untreated area and a treated area in the same paddock, all under the same management, and seeing drastic differences. They've gone from very recently did one in Queensland where they had some very good management in place and some very good soil, and they were getting 300 millimeters of rainfall infiltration per hour. So that effectively means a foot of water can go into the soil within an hour, and that covers the vast majority of heavy rainfall. But in the treated area a few meters away where we'd use Carbon Boost 4 months before for a treatment, admittedly at a bit higher rate, it had gone up to 900 mil. So it had tripled in 4 months. And now 900 mil means that basically there's almost no storms where there'd be runoff, which is ridiculous. But going even more ridiculous than that is that we've seen it go from 40 millimeters an hour to 2,500 millimeters an hour. It's 2.5 meters of rainfall an hour could be soaked up in that soil. That doesn't mean that it's going to actually be able to take a full 2.5 meters. It means that it can do it at that rate up until the point where it gets saturated. So that means that you're no longer going to lose any of your rain to runoff or evaporation. And then that leads to, in some circumstances, you can more than double your effective rainfall. It doesn't increase your rainfall, it increases the amount of benefit that you get out of it. And less visible than that is the amount of water that's stored. So you get more water in there, and then you're able to hold more water and give a higher proportion of that back to a plant. So that's one of the critical things that you see. Some of the other benefits are strongly increased animal health, which comes from increased microbial activity. So that leads to plants that are creating that hold all sorts of immunity improving. And I know that immunity improving is such an overused thing in all sorts of health stuff, but things related to the ability to fight off pests and diseases. When the animal eats them, they take up a lot of those. And we're seeing things like doubling or more of animal growth rates, not because it's magically making them grow faster, but because it's improving the quality of the food that they're eating, as in the actual nutrition, as well as providing compounds in there that help them fight off parasites, pests, and diseases, to the point where some of our customers don't use any animal health products anymore, like vaccinations or things like that, because they don't need to. So those things together leads to significantly improved growth rates. So I'm fishing around here because it's not that there isn't a huge amount of potential benefits, it's which one do you talk about next? And just a third one off the top of my head, I mean, could go all day, not because the product does all these things again, because the product triggers some key players that then lead to all these outcomes. So nutrient use efficiency. So for example, nitrogen fertilizers, depending on the type of the fertilizer and the way that it's applied, a high proportion of it can be lost back to the atmosphere as a gas. The atmosphere is mostly nitrogen gas. And in most circumstances, especially in broadacre agriculture, where people are chasing yield, the amount that's put on isn't the amount that the plant needs. It's the amount that you need to put on to make sure that the plant has got as much as it wants at any one time. And that means you need to include the amount that gets lost in the process. And so if you're able to change the soil and plant system to one where there's significantly lower losses, you can have the same amount of available nitrogen, the same amount of plant nitrogen uptake, but significantly reduce the amount that you put on the soil, the amount that you pay for, the amount that you have to go out and spread. And it's not magically creating nitrogen from nothing. It's that you're reducing losses, and that means that you need to put less on, which then saves you money for the same outcome. That also applies to phosphorus. You put it on, it doesn't become a gas, but it tends to get locked up on soil particles or often eroded away in heavy rainfall. So if we've reduced runoff, then that's one of the major ways that phosphorus leaves a farm and goes into a waterway and causes problems. So we've eliminated that one. Increasing microbial activity, especially mycorrhizal fungi, increases the plant's ability to get access to phosphorus that's being locked up. So you get a higher proportion of what you put on being used. So that means you can reduce the rate. And then on top of that, as a result of the microbial activity, they're producing humus themselves, which includes humic acids. Some of the humic acids and related compounds can insert themselves between the clay in the soil, which is normally where phosphorus gets locked up, and then mobilize phosphorus, put themselves back onto that spot where that was bound, and then bind the phosphorus back onto the outside of it, but in a much softer fashion that most plants can easily get access to. So just in phosphorus, there's 3 mechanisms off the top of my head where you can increase the proportion of phosphorus that goes from the fertilizer that's applied into the plant without being lost. It's pretty common that can be a 50% reduction in how much you need to apply to get the same outcome. Nitrogen, the upper end is approaching 90%. I definitely don't recommend that you jump straight to that, but there's plenty of circumstances where it's getting up to that rate, and 50% is quite common to be able to achieve. Don't necessarily go and just drop it. It has to go along with increasing the root and microbial activity for the soil. Yeah, so Carbon Boost has this whole, probably find 50 of them if I thought about it, but they're all related to increases in microbial diversity and activity, and changes in the way that plant roots behave.